Welcome to Real Vision Daily Briefing. It's Thursday, April 18, 2024. We're joined by Maggie Lake. You're not Jamie Coots.
No, I'm not. But I happen to be in front of my computer. So guess what? I win the prize.
We got you here. We should probably say we're having a little bit of technical difficulties right now with Jamie. He may join the show already in progress. We'll have to see. If not, Maggie Lake, we're doing a festival of learning right now.
We are, but like let's rein in expectations. I am not going to be able to pontificate about the world of crypto the way Jamie does, and we lean on him for that. But I'm happy I was able to pop in with you because we're doing a festival of learning on everything in the crypto world, not just Bitcoin and ETH, right? All the other issues. And I know a lot of our folks watching have been in Solana, done really well in that. And I know we had some great stuff with Sergio Silva, who is just amazing. But before we jump into that, I want to just kind of point out that this is a really interesting time, isn't it, Ash? Because we have so much going on the macro front. And in so many of the conversations, we started out the week talking about geopolitics, a lot of concern about the direction of interest rates and the bond market. One of the big risks people see is that these yields keep going higher. Everyone's pulling back those Fed expectations. But the question seems to be, where do you look? Where's the safe haven? Is it gold? Is it Bitcoin? Is this finally the moment? But prices there have been a little volatile. So that intersection between macro and crypto is super interesting right now.
Well, it sure is. And that's incredibly well said. There's a lot going on right now in the space. I went out last night and did a dinner with three crypto guys who are both all three of them, I should say, are former macro guys. And it was really interesting. These are really, really smart individuals. And no one really seemed to be willing to take a call about the directionality of where markets were headed. We kind of asked this question. So what do you guys think? It really feels like we're in this weird kind of period here of figuring out where things are going to land. Obviously, we've got geopolitical instability, some challenges right now, obviously in the Middle East that are always in the headlines. Moreover, we should say we've got an election in November. That always creates a great deal of Sturm und Drang and here in the United States. And all eyes, obviously, on the Fed, expectations being reined in by Jay Powell in terms of the probability of rate cuts and the magnitude of the rate cuts for 2024. Maggie, how do you weigh all of this? I know you mentioned interest rates. I'm looking right now on my screen at the two-year Treasury yield, which is pinned right now just 499 basis points, just beneath the 5% mark. Obviously, a pretty steep rise here, almost 100 basis points call it since the beginning of the year. Precisely what you were alluding to. How do you contextualize all of this?
Yeah. So let's talk about, so we know everyone's time crunched, right? And we're all sort of struggling to keep up. Let's just highlight a couple of the things that were said this week for people who may not be watching every single piece of programming that we put out. Marco Papich called the U.S. election. We started talking about Israel and Iran and the implications and, what happens from here, which is still an open question, by the way. And if we're heading into the weekend like that, that's going to be a concern. But Marco Papich said it's the U.S. election that is a macro black hole. And he has a lot of concerns about a bond riot, about the sort of, the U.S. administration and the Fed losing control of the bond market. We haven't seen, used to be called bond vigilantes. Christopher is in the chat. I know you'll remember that. And as well, people who've been around for a long time, but we haven't seen that. There are a lot of people investing in these markets who don't remember that that's possible, and that the Fed doesn't control everything. And if bond traders lose their confidence about the direction of inflation or policy, that they'll take matters into their own hand and demand to be compensated for the risks they're taking on. So that's a real concern, and it's coming up in more of my conversations. Talked to Greg Weldon yesterday, who is really concerned about currencies and the pressure the US dollar is putting on currencies. Ash, on the platform, we have a lot of conversations about the dollar wrecking ball. Just stick that in the AI tool for those of you who are new to the platform, and you'll pull up a whole bunch of shows that talk about that. And so he's watching a whole host of Asian currencies that are getting to really, really critical levels, and was talking to me about it feeling like the Plaza Accord days. And so again, go back to your history books. This is the kind of stuff, Ash, that we haven't been talking about in a long time. Doesn't mean it's going to happen, but the fact that people are bringing these things up concerns me.
Let's talk a little bit about Plaza Accords to give some context. I think that happened back in 1980 at the Plaza Hotel, a few blocks in that direction for sitting. But the idea here was that the dollar strengthened very dramatically in a very short period of time, and it caused chaos in the rest of the world.
Yeah, exactly. And there was an agreement about devaluing, right? I mean, this is it's some kind of coordinated action. So again, these are all the analysts who come on give it's all about probabilities. They're just trying to no one can figure out no one has a crystal ball, but they're talking about trying to evaluate the probabilities they face, the risks that are out there. And so those are two big ones that came up. But we're going into earnings season. Banks so far, earnings were pretty good. The stocks have been selling off all week, but there's still an open question. If we get decent earnings, does that trump anything that we're seeing, on the rate side? Can the economy still do well? Can the stock market do well if rates kind of stay here and don't go higher? If this is it, and we've got decent profits coming through, can the tone change next week? And maybe, but I want to know, what are you hearing on the crypto side? We're going into the halving this weekend, the Bitcoin halving, which I know a lot of the crypto folks that I've been talking to say it's a sort of nothing burger. It's already priced in, but we have seen more price volatility. We saw some conjecture in Solana. Who did you talk to today? What's top of mind for everybody in that space?
Well, I talked to Sergio Silva today about
Oh,
Solana.
did you do the 3 ideas with him?
I did. I did. And he was great, as always, talking about the Solana ecosystem, where he's most bullish right now, and some of the things that are being built on top of Solana, in addition to the underlying protocol itself, that he sees as levered bets on the Solana trade. But I want to touch on Bitcoin for a second, because obviously this halving or halvening, depending on how you want to pronounce it, is usually a very big deal in the space. But I think you're right, Maggie. The consensus opinion is that the upward price action has already been priced in, that we saw that pulled forward, I think, with the ETF. That seems to be what people in the space are talking about. But again, it's sort of the same point that I alluded to earlier, which is there is this sense that we're in this moment here where we really don't know what the next mega trend is going to be, where the directionality is going to head. It just seems as though it's just a moment, whether it's in traditional capital markets or in digital asset markets, where everybody just seems to be scratching their head, looking to find the next series of trends. As you point out, obviously significant instability and open questions in the Middle East, a presidential election. I want to touch on something that you mentioned, though, which is bond vigilantes, because I wanted to talk a little bit about this for folks who don't know what that phrase means, maybe who aren't old enough to know what that phrase means. Bond vigilantes is this notion that bond investors are going to rebel against monetary policy, against fiscal policy, against financial repression, and massively reprice bonds to the downside, causing yields to dramatically spike, borrowing costs to rise, and raising the potential of this feedback loop in the bond markets. That's not something we've seen. By the way, bond vigilantes are most in eminence right now in 2024 for not showing up during the 2008 financial crisis for quantitative easing, for all the spectacularly innovative, if we want to be polite about it, monetary policy that we've seen since the 2008 era. That has not been a factor. Of course, there's no guarantee that they won't show up in the future, but that's been the history. Obviously, we've seen this relatively controlled rise in rates. Go ahead, Maggie.
No, you're absolutely right. They didn't show up. But, in the great financial crisis, even bond vigilantes don't want the wheels to come off the financial system, right? And that's what was happening at the time. So,
well, bond vigilantes, most of all, don't want the wheels to come off.
Yeah. So I think that is like, if things are chugging along normally and they're mad about inflation, then they send their message. By the way, I'm just looking in the chat. You guys are the best. Christopher said, in 1980, TNC dubbed me King of the Night. You should elaborate on that, Christopher. But he's been trading a long time, traded through a lot of the stuff that we're talking about. And it's really useful to connect. And we're trying to bring people on the platform. For those of you who are watching on YouTube, get your Real Vision membership, because we're trying to bring people on the platform who do understand, who were there, who saw what happened. And Ash, you haven't had a chance to see this yet, but I did a My Life in 4 Trades with Dan Tapiero. And some of you may see Dan. He's very much in the digital asset world, started a new fund, 10T, and he calls that the biggest macro trade. So he's sort of very much thinking about it the same way Raul is. But Dan is the OG in macro trading, worked with all of the huge, giant whales that you read about, and was in on so many of these epic trades. So think about the pound getting knocked out of the exchange rate mechanism, the Asian currency crisis. This was one of Dan's trades that we talked about, which was incredible. And then Greg rolls up and starts talking about the sort of setup looking so similar. So it's a really good time to go back and listen to those people who were trading at the time, what they saw, what they were paying attention to. And if you think it's above you, you don't have to feel that way. Dan was a history major. He was not a finance guy. In fact, he went and got his master's in history. And that ability to understand the world, obviously very smart guy, kind of connected to his love and desire to get into finance is what really helped him craft and get tasked with crafting some of these big macro trades. So it's so interesting. I mean, you don't have to be in finance to do this stuff.
Boy, that's some old school stuff. And I think that's what we do here on Real Vision. One of the things we do best is the idea of unpacking some of these stories. 1997 Asian financial crisis, ERM, Black Wednesday, George Soros breaking the pound. Boy, it's great to have some of those folks who were here. I have to ask you this, since you did the 4 trades, My Life in 4 Trades with Dan, the trade that he mentioned to me that stuck out in my mind most when I did an RVIP with him a couple of months ago was a trade that he did not do, which was to buy into an investment into FTX.
Yes, that's right.
Did he tell that story?
Yeah, no, he didn't. So that someone like Dan, he has done so many of these epic trades because he's been around for so long. And now also has a foot in we're talking about all the macro trades, but has seen it all in this very early kind of birth of digital too. So he passed on a couple of really, not just FTX. He sidestepped, luckily for him, a couple of the problem spots. And he was talking about trying to make those distinctions and judgments about where to put your money in something that's so new. You don't have the kind of track record that you might have in Ash. In fact, wait, someone just asked a question about your book, but I don't think it was that book because, of course, you wrote all about that. But yeah, he didn't like what he saw. He's very much a people person. He got burned by getting involved in a deal that a friend brought him in on, and he got burned by it. And it wasn't just that it went south. It was I want to choose my words carefully here. He thinks the CEO founder knew exactly what he was doing. And so after that, he's very, very wary. And so he makes a judgment, not just on the company and the prospects, but on the management,
Right.
Which again is old school, right? Peter Bookfart listens to all the company managements and really digs in the detail that not everybody does that homework, but it makes a big difference. And Dan does it even in the digital space.
Yeah, it was really interesting to hear him talk about how essentially he just asked them for basic information. They weren't able to provide it. And he was like, what's going on with these guys? Like, I don't care what smart Silicon Valley VCs are saying and doing. If I can't get answers to the most basic questions, if they can't literally like email me the financials that I'm asking for, I'm not investing in these guys. As you say, Maggie, totally old school.
Yeah, right. And like so obvious, but whether you're talking about digital or you're talking about traditional, it happens all the time. Like we can come up with a million names, Bernie Madoff, all these people where, enough people did it and it seemed legit. By the way, it happens in sports too. I read a great thing about avalanches, but I'm going to go off topic. Stephen in the chat said some newbies here. Stephen Jennings. Hello, Stephen. Some newbies here. Help tune in so we can get the don't fuck this up steps and execute ASAP. Appreciate some guidance. So obviously, Jamie's amazing on what he's doing in the crypto space, and he's not here. But we'll get him. We'll get him to roll up for the festival hopefully tomorrow. And we've got another great guest. Ash, you're catching up. I think it's Jeff. Jeff is here tomorrow, right, Brian?
Jeff Snyder?
No. Jeff Dorman.
Yes,
yeah,
that's
and
going to be great.
Yeah, he's amazing because he's a lot of these guys are traditional finance, but also now in crypto. So they're really, really great at this intersection. But Stephen, what I wanted to tell you is that the next installment of the Crypto Academy is coming. And I'm guessing you're leaning more on that side since you mentioned DFTU. And so there's going to be a lot of great stuff on there. And there's some really good I don't actually know if I'm supposed to be talking about this, but there's a lot more product coming for people who are earlier on the journey. Let's just say that, because some of the stuff we do is really directed at people who are pros. Like they're really deep in the space. They're working in the space. They've been investing in the space, like Ash. But then for the rest of us, which I count myself, there's going to be a lot more content sort of geared toward those of us who are sort of bootstrapping it right now, which
By the
is
way,
really exciting. So watch out for that, Stephen. We'll have more details soon.
talking about pros, Jeff Dorman is someone who's been on Real Vision Pro Crypto with me a number of times. He's always fantastic. And he provides, I think, just a really comprehensive thesis with the way he sees the world. He's very eloquent about expressing in narrative form the way that he actually thinks about the mechanics of markets. So it's going to be great to have him on RVDB tomorrow, where everyone can view it live on YouTube streaming. Oh, here's a question that I wanted to get to. This is what you were alluding to earlier, Maggie. This is from Paul English.
Yes. I just
Ash,
saw that. I was just going to ask you this, Ash.
Oh, this is great. What chapter in Crypto Crack Up did you enjoy writing the most? I think it was the chapter about where it seemed as though Binance was going to buy FTX, and there was this huge drama back and forth happening between CZ and SBF publicly on Twitter. I was actually stuck in Connecticut trying to get a passport so I could go down to the Cayman Islands for a Real Vision event. It was like chaos. We tell the whole story in the book. That one was a lot of fun to write. It involves Archer and me, who of course is our Real Vision producer, who produced a lot of the RV crypto content. We talk about that, some great personal stories there, as well as the sort of just spectacularly bizarre spectacle of watching these two crypto billionaires go after each other on Twitter. So that was a fascinating one, and many, many more, I think, anecdotes just like that. Go ahead, Maggie.
I know people are going to look back and say, like, you just can't make this up. How did this happen? Which is so great and important, because I know you guys flipped that book while doing your full-time job, we should add. But it's so good to get it all down in the moment, because it seems so incredible. I think you doubt yourself after the fact. Like, did this really happen?
Totally.
Also, Ash, can you please accept Matthew's LinkedIn invite? You've been ignoring it. I have a feeling Ash is bad at.
No, I will accept, but I have to say LinkedIn is the place where I probably spend the least.
I was just going to say, I just said he's probably bad at admin. He's too busy writing another book. Hey, I want to flag something that came up, and I haven't even done it myself yet. I'm so guilty. But on the platform, do you guys all know that you can share notes now? So for those of you who are newer coming on and you want to kind of tap into the hive mind, or for those of you who are so good, because we have some real
Maggie, tell people what notes are for people who are watching us on YouTube.
On the platform, on the RV platform, Real Vision website, I should say, calling it platform, but website, you can use all these AI tools and take notes. And they were before like notes for yourself, but now, which is super helpful, by the way, because when especially if you want to follow up on something, or you want to ask a question when we have someone coming on, or you're not sure about something, or we get a lot of people who take notes because they're like, wait a minute, I just heard someone say this and someone else say this, and they seem diametrically opposed to each other, which is by design, because we try to get people with a wide range of opinions. That's where the magic happens, right? So before, we had a great note-taking tool that you could use to make your notes and follow up on them, or ask AI more questions about them. Now you can share them so that you are kind of feeding into the hive mind. So that's what that is. If you go around and play on it, play on the platform, you can probably figure it out. To be honest, I haven't tried it yet, but I will. I'm going to, and because I have a lot of questions about the Crypto Festival of Learning. Asking for a friend. Oh, wait, look, Brian's going to show us.
There it is.
See, Brian is really running the show here. He knows everything.
He's always running the show.
So that's where you could do that. So it's super exciting. And Raul's been using it. So we always say, like, you can message us on the platform, but this is another way to, especially, I think a lot of the people we have on, we torture Raul with this, but a lot of the people we have on have a different view from Raul, right? And so we're always like, wait a minute, they're saying this, and they're worried about the world falling apart. Yeah, there you go. But Raul said this. So this is just another way for the conversation to sort of continue.
Yeah, and let me just walk through what Brian's doing right now, because this is really interesting. So every show on Real Vision has an embedded streaming transcript that actually syncs along with the video. And what Brian's doing is he's copying something from the transcript, and I believe he's probably about to paste it into notes. So the idea is, if someone says something that you think is really interesting, you want to come back to it later, you can copy it, you can paste it, you can grab it and put it into notes. By the way, also, we have two distinct different pieces of AI functionality, one that analyzes the video itself, and one that can give you more general AI information, so that what you can do with that is, if there's a concept that you need a little bit of background on, Raoul's mentioning, for example, financial repression, you can go and use AI to define that. You can embed all of it into notes, and then you can share it with other Real Vision users. There it is. There's a Real Vision bot,
I
the
love
finance
it.
bot and the Real Vision bot. The finance bot is the general information AI, and the video bot is the AI that's specific to this particular video. Hey, Brian, can you type in, summarize this video for me, please, just to show folks what we're talking about here? There it is.
Summarize this video, and they're going to say Maggie and Ash talking a lot of. Oh, I'll let you fill in. I'll let you fill in the blank.
This is a real human who's typing this stuff in.
Brian's real.
Yeah, Brian's real for sure.
I was going to start a rumor that maybe Brian is Milton. We haven't figured that one out yet. He's still not dead, but I spent so much time with Brian. I don't know if it's Milton. I'm going to get to the bottom of it.
Brian's too tall to be Milton. I've seen Milton. Milton is
everyone at Real Vision is too tall. So for those of you who haven't been to one of our meetups, there is this very weird thing. You can attest to this, Ash, where usually when you see people on a screen, there's everyone's like, "Oh, I thought you're so small. I thought you were taller." I don't know if you've ever seen celebrities. It's very often the case that people are much shorter in real life than you are used to seeing them on TV. This is exactly the opposite at Real Vision. It seems like everyone we bump into is a giant. We have a lot of really tall people that cross in our orbit. Even people who are on frequently, like Kevin Kelly, they're like 6'4". It's incredible.
I am 5'10", and I am the shortest person I've ever met at Real Vision. It's like it's
Elaine, I had you beat.
Hey, by the way, I would be remiss if I didn't mention this, because Brian was showing the video. I wanted to talk a little bit about Raoul Pal's video for the Festival of Learning, which he's calling the biggest trade of all time. I wanted to just give you a little bit of context on what Raoul is thinking. Again, as you point out, Maggie, not Real Vision's official position, but Raoul's position, because it's an interesting one. Raoul is talking about financial repression, this notion that essentially the rise in public sector debt is growing dramatically, and that central banks, governments will have simply no choice except to do things to dilute the value of the money, causing, in Raoul's view, a flight to digital assets like cryptocurrency, things like Bitcoin, that central banks cannot distort the value of.
Right. Which would be, for those of you who watch pro macro insiders, completely opposite of what folks like Julian think, and plenty of other people that have been on in the last week or so who prefer gold or who prefer real assets. But all of these things, everyone who comments on this, and by the way, this is not financial advice, that we're just repeating some of the opinions that are shared. All of them also have a lot of caveats, though. This is one thing, Ash, like the conviction, Raoul is very convicted, but a lot of other people have a thought, but then they're saying, but these are the risks I see. There's a lot. It's a very murky macro backdrop right now. It's very complicated, and it's hard to just sort of make a guess and a bet and then walk away, which is why we're spending so much time on education. We're bringing these people who are usually on our platform onto shows like the Daily Briefing and onto Festival of Learnings to try to sort of share information to arm everybody, really, to kind of help them make the decision that will be best for them. And everybody's is different, right? Everybody's risk profile is different, but everyone, the one thing everyone agrees on is this is a very, very fraught time, and it's hard to see. There's like, it's hard to see through the fog of a lot of things. So people are being very careful, and they're kind of like constantly checking their framework. That's what I'm hearing on the macro side. I don't know on the crypto side, because we had this big rally, but it seems like now there's a bit of volatility.
Well, same, but different. I think that's exactly right. It feels like the murky moment. We were sort of talking about this earlier, but it has this feeling of it's a period sort of between regimes. It's the interregnum. It's the period when one thing seems to be ending and maybe another thing hasn't yet begun. Obviously, with all the things that we've talked about in terms of elections, in terms of geopolitics, in terms of the ambiguity around what's going to happen next with the Fed here in the United States, it just really feels as though markets really can't find a direction. I should say we saw some relatively muted volatility today on U.S. equities. So that, I guess, is part and parcel of this broader theme, Maggie.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So I just want to flag, so on the festival today, if you missed it, Sergio Silva is one of my favorite people. I did I did a My Life in 4 Trades. I always tell people when I mention him, please go listen to it. Make your kids listen to it. His backstory and where he came from and how he got to Goldman, which is, where he started in traditional finance, is simply amazing. And he's the nicest human being in the world. He's fantastic. So you did a great 3 ideas with with him where he did his top picks. So if you don't know, 3 Ideas is a show that's on our platform, where people come on and pick their best 3 trades. And then we track them and see how they perform. This is where Beth Kindig famously told us, we should have all listened to her. Some of you did, if you were lucky and watched it, about NVIDIA. Like, she was way, way early. I was just on a webinar with her, actually, when I jumped off to do this. But we track the trade. So this was a Solana version that Ash did. Raoul has his kickoff of the whole festival where he describes what Ash was just talking about. And then you know this guy, Ash, probably better than I do. Josh Carpe Noctem, better known as
Josh Selkowitz.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. He was on talking about how to understand charts, how to use technical analysis, when to take profits. Again, for those of you who are in the crypto world who kind of maybe came through it from a non-traditional financial lens. And so he did a whole section on sort of how to think about price movement. And that's part of having a framework, whether you're in crypto or not. If you're looking at this is just how to understand that world, which is probably super interesting. And of course, Jamie, who missed today, but he will come back on, is really working hard, just creating a really robust framework across so many different parts of the digital asset space.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I was excited to get on RVDB with Jamie Coots because Jamie and I have been doing a show regularly here on Real Vision Pro Crypto, where Jamie's writing these reports. I think he's writing 2 a month right now. And he's writing these very detailed analytic reports linking price action to fundamentals of network activity and utilization. And it's really interesting. Jamie's got a really interesting background. He's a guy who was at Bloomberg, who spent decades in equity research, first at some financial services banks here in the US, and then later, or rather, I should say in Australia. I think it was the banks in Australia, and then joined Bloomberg and helped to build out their data for their equities analytics program. So he's a very serious thinker about the way analytics work, and he's applying that to network value, network transaction history, network transaction volume relative to price action. He writes those reports about every 2 weeks, and then Jamie and I go on the platform and we walk through it. And it's just a great discussion. And I'm really looking forward to getting him on RVDB so that we can bring that out to a broader audience, show them a little bit about what we're doing on RV Pro Crypto, Maggie.
Yeah, and he's using that sort of same discipline approach. We just did an RVIP with him where people from that club could roll up and ask him anything, and it was so interesting, and it was such a good conversation. And Jamie is so thorough in what he's doing, and I think it's going to be so useful because for anybody who has more of a traditional background, that the way he evaluates and talks about it is going to be understandable. Right now, there's that kind of gap, right? But he's sort of bringing that same rigor that he would have if you looked at any other kind of asset and really applying it to this and having kind of creating, I think, what's going to be a fantastic benchmark because a lot of this stuff is new. So he's like really going in the weeds. It's really amazing. I learned a lot being on with him, but we will get him on, not to worry. I'm just going to mention one last thing from the chat. Stephen's saying the Canadian budget yesterday adds $40 billion to the deficit per year for the next 4 years. Like, listen, this debt issue is not just a US issue. It's everywhere. It's global, which is why I think there's so much concern starting to build about what happens with that. So it's going to be super interesting. But Ash, I think, we're out of time. I can't believe it.
We've run
over. Fun
over
to be on with you. We never get to sort of chit chat about we're always doing different shows. So we never get to get together and
all right, Maggie, I'm going to pitch you something. Every day, 5 p.m., you and me here on YouTube, Real Vision Nightly Briefing.
First of all, that would require drinks, and it's probably bad for my health. And I think we'll have to make it a special occasion since, as everybody knows, I got kiddos who might object to that when they're looking for dinner. But we'll make it happen on a special occasion, Ash.
Yeah,
this was on that.
This was a lot of fun to do with you, Maggie.
It was. And listen, we're sorry Jamie couldn't make it, but check out all the good stuff we referenced if you hadn't had a chance to poke around and catch up with what's happening on the Real Vision platform. And if you have any questions for Jamie, if you were rolling up with some questions, leave them in the comment section. We will look at them. And Jamie is so great. He always responds. And then Ash is going to continue. We have a day 2 of the Festival of Learning. If you missed day 1, don't worry, sign up. It's free. Brian will drop the link. You can catch up on what you missed. You can tune in tomorrow. And then you can join Ash on the daily briefing for Jeff.
And I promise you, Jeff's going to be great tomorrow. And I promise you, we're going to get Jamie Coots back on this show so that we can get you a taste of what you're missing on Real Vision Pro Crypto. The great Maggie Lake, thank you so much for joining us on a moment's notice.
Thanks, Ash. It was fun.
Join us for free on the Real Vision Online Festival. This is what we've been talking about here. This is the Festival of Learning. Head over to realvision.com/FOL. That's realvision.com/FOL to register for free for this Festival of Learning. Thank you so much for watching. We're going to get you Jamie Coots real soon. Thanks again. Thanks for joining us. Have a great afternoon.